The Rebel Wolves Reddit AMA just concluded, and I've gathered and organized all of the developer responses. I think mostly all of them. There's definitely some new stuff here, but also the Blood of Dawnwalker had a 14-page feature in the Edge magazine with some super interesting information, so I'll summarize that as well in the final chapter marker of this video. Let's jump right in. Let's start off with a general information category. There will be a physical and box edition of the game for consoles. As for Collector's Edition, they're trying to make it happen for this game, but one thing that we do know is that there is an art book and comic book in the works. Rebel Wolves appears to be in spirit to be in support of the modding community, but it won't be until after release when they can really look into supporting mods with potential tools, etc. This game was created with a saga in mind, so there are ideas for future sequels with plenty of more lore and story that they want to share with us. And actually, in the separate Edge magazine article, there is an excerpt that says that the Blood of Dawnwalker has an immortal protagonist who does not age in his vampire form, potentially serving as the foundation for a series that could follow his exploits across different historical eras. So some of these potential future games may be about Cohen again, or at the very least have him around. And kind of getting some Assassin's Creed vibes here in a way. I'm not a big Assassin's Creed fan, but in that aspect it sounds pretty cool. The Blood of Dawnwalker will have Polish and Italian dubbing on 1.0, as well as Hungarian, Czech, and Brazilian Portuguese text location. I'm sure many more as well, but these were the specific ones that were answered, or the questions that were asked in the AMA, and a photo mode for the game is also part of the plan. Someone asked if the game is coming to Switch 2, and the response was that they are currently focusing on releasing the game for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series S and X. When it comes to Nintendo Switch 2, it's not in development, but we're open to that idea. Moving on to the gameplay section. So we might be able to add beard and hair customization after launch, says Rebel Wolves. There will be many types of armor to choose from, but no helmets in this game. As for weapons, the game is mostly focused around different types of swords. You have long swords, great swords, and short swords, and they're all said to feel different and affect how fast you can attack. There's going to be two ways to approach combat in this game. One is the more strategic directional combat, where you can control what direction your sword is swung or held up to block. But there's also going to be more of an action RPG style, and this could also be looked at as an accessibility feature, where you can use so-called omni attacks and omni blocks without the need to consider direction. Both modes will have stamina management though. Also note though that there will be a story mode in the game where combat will be much more forgiving. Crafting is confirmed in this game, and it will be focused around making consumables such as various tinctures and concoctions that will be useful in and out of combat. Someone asked if there will be a transmog system, and the devs responded by saying not for the base game, but we will consider it for the DLC, though sounds like some sort of DLC is confirmed. There will not be a central hub or house in the game that you always return to put up trophies, decorate, or hang out in, and the devs stated that's because they didn't feel like it would fit the theme and story of this game. There will be a dynamic weather system in the game which can affect gameplay. For example, if it's foggy out, it will be harder to see. A question was asked about what excited the devs most, and Rebel Wolves gave a few answers related to combat that I found interesting that I'm going to put here in the gameplay section. One of the devs said that they are really excited for theory crafters to see the powerful builds that they can come up with that can overpower even the strongest of enemies. So that is exciting to hear, that there's going to be some creativity involved with how you handle your Cohen's build. Rebel Wolves is excited to see how raw skill and reflexes are able to fare on the game's harder difficulty parameters, and to see these players attempt to engage higher level zones and bosses at a lower level. So that confirms that there will be areas in the game that are just simply higher level, so it's not level scaling. And they're also excited to see the more story-driven players, especially those who feel like the directional type combat is too intimidating or complex, as they've gone great lengths to make this combat system optional. So they're excited to see people be able to interact with that optional system and hopefully enjoy the game. And since I don't know where to put this one, categorically speaking, I'll just leave it here in the gameplay section. There will be some sex scenes in the Blood of Dawnwalker, and they're not going to be fade to black scenes. However, they can be skipped just like other cutscenes. Okay, moving into the section that I'm calling the world and time section. So the Blood of Dawnwalker is going to be an open world game where you can go anywhere that you want after the prologue, but it does have different areas slash biomes as well. Examples include the city of Svartrau, some smaller villages, mountains, forests, riverside, swamps, and ancient ruins. This is going to be a totally non-linear game, and your choices are said to matter a lot, and that's in caps lock, the a lot. Both within quests, so decisions you'll make in the dialogues or the way that you tackle the whole quests, as quests can be completed in multiple ways, and on a large scale. So which quests you choose to follow, which quests you choose to disregard, whom you befriend, everything might affect the world. They gave us a reminder here that exploration doesn't move forward time at all in this game. So as many of you are aware, there's a 30-day and night limit to save your family, but only quests that are marked with the timer icon will move the in-game time forward. So explore to your heart's content. On a similar subject, once you reach the 30-day limit for the main quest, it is confirmed that the game, I shouldn't even say main quest actually, but I'm just going to say it in this case because that's what they said in the AMA. But as I go on in this video, you'll understand why the game is not really centered around having to do a main quest. But it's confirmed that the game doesn't just end after that quest, is completed or perhaps failed, I guess you could say. You'll still be able to play the game, and time is going to work the same after the 30 days as it did before, but the circumstances will change. If your family dies, Brensis will still be in that castle, and you can still confront him. I do talk about this in the last chapter marker going over the Edge article, but it was mentioned in the Q&A as well, and the devs predict that a really meticulous player who really tries to plan things out and do everything you possibly can in every way will be able to possibly experience 80% of the content that the game offers, or 80% of the quests that the game offers on a single run. With that said, this game is of course built around non-linear stories with different choice and consequence and different pathways, so it will be possible to replay the game multiple times and have very different experiences on each run for that. But for that player who really is trying to just do everything, they throw 80% around as the percentage, and I think that's like the amount of quests that you could encounter, not necessarily the way that you handle the quest. You're not gonna be able to do 100% of every quest, but you'll have access to 80% of the quests if you handle the game meticulously. Someone asked if there are certain quests that are only exclusive to night or day, and the dev stated that there might be some quests you can only complete at a specific time, but in general you can approach quests in many different ways, day or night, and you might encounter different opportunities depending on if it's day or night. For example, there might be an important NPC that has important information, but at the nighttime, this NPC may be sleeping. So if you want to talk to that NPC, you have to come back in the daytime. Another example is you can investigate frescoes in the cathedral at night, but you won't be able to climb the scaffoldings during the day without your vampiric traversal powers. Instead, you can try asking people in the cathedral if they know something. The dev stated that the game is not very stealth focused, but you can do stealthy takedowns using your vampiric abilities at night and jumping down on unsuspecting enemies. When it comes to sentient beings in the game, for monsters there are Uriashi, pixies, and kobolds, which have unique hive minds. And then for more monsters, we have the Moroni, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, which are this sort of failed vampire, which is pretty interesting. Also expect undead hiding in ancient ruins. We have the Lycos, Soglavs, and more. And I think some of these are actually mythical creatures. I have to look them up on Google sometime. Moving into the story and lore section now, someone asked how many endings the game will have, and the dev's response was that there are multiple ways to finish the game, but that we won't say the exact number, not to spoil anything. Someone asked if we could side with the vampires and still achieve our goal, and the dev's response was no spoilers, but you can try. There's going to be no werewolf characters in the game, but Dawnwalkers in some ways are inspired by werewolves, as a Dawnwalker turns from human to vampire when night rolls around, kind of like a werewolf turning from human to werewolf under the full moon. Cohen is the oldest of 4 siblings. His 2 sisters are Yana and Lunka. Lunka's the youngest, and a brother named Murto, They're being very mysterious about the fourth one. Someone asked, is there completely branching storylines in the game, something like The Witcher 2? And Rebel Wolves devs responded by saying the element of choice and consequence is very important in our game, so depending on your decisions and actions, or inactions, the stories might develop in entirely different ways and the world might change, but there are no whole huge acts that will get cut off. However, you can cut off quests if you kill the quest givers. The two ladies from the recent trailer that appeared to be some sort of perhaps teachers to Cohen, one maybe for the human magical type stuff and the other for vampire stuff, not entirely sure. But we have names for them now. Anka, A-N-C-A, and Lakra. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce them. Garlic will do nothing to vampires in this game, just so you're aware. Now, we could see this with our own eyes in the trailers, but Rebel Wolves has not confirmed that this is more than just cosmetic yet until now, as far as I'm aware. But there are characters that have their own cultural backgrounds from places far away from Val Sangora. And for the Vampire Lord specifically, Xanthi is a priestess turned vampire from ancient Greece. Bakir spent decades galloping across the dry steppes of Central Asia, burning, trampling, and pillaging. And Brensis, the vampire overlord, used to be a Roman senator. And actually, in the separate magazine article, we learned that Brensis is voiced by James Spooner. And this character is a vampire that has emerged from centuries in the shadows to claim the freedom and authority long denied to him. So that makes sense, obviously. Something happened to him back in his day as a senator of Rome. And lastly, for this section, the devs state that they take a lot of inspiration from the culture, folklore, and history of Central and Eastern Europe. And yes, that includes Transylvania, Dracula, and Romania, and more. And that is it for the Q&A, so let's move on to the article in the Edge magazine written by Simon Parkin, who visited Rebel Wolves Studio in Poland and interviewed Conrad, the founder and director of Dawnwalker. So the article starts off by giving us some information on Conrad, who had joined CDPR back in 2004. By the time The Witcher 2 entered production, he had moved into the lead quest designer position, and of course for The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, he was in the director position. Conrad notes that after Cyberpunk production began, he started to miss the old days when the studio was much smaller, and with Cyberpunk he had become much more of a manager versus being someone that actually touches the game itself, and this is one of the reasons why he branched off and formed his own studio, Rebel Wolves, which is coming up just about at that 4-year mark of being a studio. And this is meant to be a studio of no multiplayer, no microtransactions, no shareholder demands, one game at a time, no compromises. Some stories will close because of your actions, your conscious actions or conscious inactions in the game's time management system. This game is not designed to allow a player to do or experience every possible outcome or situation in a single playthrough. It's designed around choice consequence. And Rebel Wolves even says that the most meticulously planned playthrough would allow a player to finish, they're guessing, around 80% of the game's missions. Many times choosing one quest will make it so that you cannot do another, real consequence, and the game is careful to almost never declare a quest failed. It's more so that quests simply settle into different outcomes. So whatever your choices are, they're still valid. And speaking of missions, Dawnwalker is designed almost entirely around side quests, as there is no real main quest to follow, so to say. It's more so that you do the quests that you think you need or want to do. So in a way, these are all side quests, but you can also think of it as every quest is a potential main quest. Rebel Wolves ask themselves questions such as, what would a game look like if its developers rejected the hierarchy of main quests above everything else? What if the world refused to wait politely for the player? What if the defining feature of the experience wasn't completion at all, but absence? These are the questions that have formed Dawnwalker's design blueprints. Everything in Dawnwalker is optional, even the mandatory objective, rescuing Cohen's family from the castle where Brensis holds them, can be lost to time long before the actual game itself ends. We're then reminded that we can in fact attempt our main goal in the game right away after the prologue of the game by heading straight to the castle where the vampire lord Brensis is, and you can attempt that confrontation very early on in the game. But it's more so recommended to take the time to try to power up, gather allies in the game, etc., to make that confrontation a little bit easier, or you can perhaps walk away entirely from that goal. All of this is why Rebel Wolves calls their game a narrative sandbox. Wandering in this game is not a distraction from the story, it is the story. I personally find this to be a very interesting design philosophy, and these are some of the main reasons why I'm personally so excited to experience this game in particular. It's very different from most other RPGs. Rebel Wolves also states in the article that they refuse to go down the fetch quest route or the escort mission route for these quests, and instead they want to have these built-in quests that are built around people in crisis and stories that hinge on moral choices with no obviously correct answer. Then to end their article, I did skip over a few things that we've already talked about in previous videos or in the AMA. The article goes back over a bit about the studio, talking about how it was a risky start, forming the new studio, as Conrad and the early devs pretty much had nothing, and Conrad actually paid his staff salaries through his own savings. But then eventually, Rebel Wolves did secure some funding, which does include a minority shareholder investment from NetEase, but we're told that the studio retains complete control and is protected from shifting investment priorities. And to quote Conrad, "Success is if we stay small and independent." Thank you all so much for watching. Much more The Blood of Dawnwalker content to come, including some lore videos. I'm going to try to scrap together a few of those with what we know and put out some lore videos before the game's release, which is sometime this year. Catch y'all in the next one.